Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. We're going to do things a little bit differently for this video. For those who are new to the channel, usually I cover CRPGs like Baldur's Gate 3, Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous, Pillars of Eternity, etc., etc. This time is going to be different because last weekend was my wife's birthday, and we are both massive Lord of the Rings fans. In fact, we have Elvish writing engraved into both of our wedding rings. So I figured the perfect birthday present would be to take her to a Lord of the Rings musical, and it happens to be playing right now in the Chicago Shakespeare Theater. I mentioned this on my Discord channel, and several people reached out and said, hey, let me know how it is. I'm thinking about going to see it myself. And I said, you know what? Might as well try something a little bit different on the channel, see how the community responds to it. We're going to break this review up into two different sections. First, I'm going to talk about the things I really enjoyed about the musical and that I feel like went well. And then next, we'll talk about the things that I feel like were not executed well and I did not particularly care for. If you enjoy this review, please subscribe down below and give me a like. Let me know that you enjoyed this content. All right, so on the list of things that went well, first and foremost, I really like the Chicago Shakespeare Theater. It's set up in a way where I feel like there's no bad seat in the house, and wherever you are, you're going to get a clear view of the stage and feel like you're right there in the action. It works out very, very well. I actually got my tickets quite late. Most of the venue was already filled up, so I got seats on the second floor on the edge, and it didn't even matter. It was a perfect view, and actually when the musical finished, my wife said to me, hey, I really, really liked our seats. I feel like they worked out well. And I was thinking to myself, I didn't really choose these seats. I had to go here. So I'm so happy that she ended up still having a good time. Getting into the actual production, one of the things that I really appreciated about it is that across the board, it's well acted. There's nobody in it that I felt like just kind of phoned their performance in, or where I was scratching my head thinking, why did they allow this person to play this particular role? Seemed like everybody took their responsibilities very, very seriously, and it was a joy to watch them. There are definitely a few people who were standouts. Sam is done absolutely fantastic. To me, he's really the core of the story, that bro relationship between him and Frodo. You have to nail that if you're going to do Lord of the Rings, and this production absolutely does. Sam feels like Frodo's very best friend, someone who's going to be there for him no matter what, and that carries throughout the story. Speaking of Frodo, he is absolutely fantastic as a leading man. Fits in very, very well, does a great job carrying the story. His actor looks a little bit like the character you would remember from the movies, and so that helps it work even better. Speaking of which, Bilbo Baggins is also briefly in it. He looks exactly the way he looks in the movies, and it works absolutely fantastic. Gandalf is also done very, very well. Feels warm and empathetic, but also at the same time like a very powerful, wizened wizard. Absolutely, they nailed him. But without question, the character who left the biggest impression on me was Gollum. Gollum was absolutely incredible in this production. Again, I was sitting on the second row. When Gollum first enters the play, he enters from the second row, jumps onto a rope, and then slowly comes down to the first row and then runs up on the stage. The physicality that's involved with playing Gollum throughout the entire production was amazing to watch. I actually watched a couple of other reviews of this musical, and apparently sometimes he climbs down the wall as his introduction to it. It's just amazing all the way around. His voice sounds exactly like the movies, which is crazy to watch live. Just amazing. Absolutely amazing. They did an incredible job with him. And from acts 2 and 3, where he starts coming in, every single time he's on screen, it's just magic, pure magic. Another thing I really enjoyed about this musical is that there's a really high fun factor. Several of the actors are also musicians. So they're literally playing the instruments that you're hearing while they're acting out the characters, which is really, really cool. So it feels like constantly people are dancing, they're playing music, they're having a good time, they're singing, and it just really pulls you into everything that's happening and makes you feel like you're having a good time. Also, across the board, the production does not feel cheap. There's a huge emphasis on using lights and colors to add to different scenes that you're viewing. There's a platform that they use to be able to move around characters when it would add to certain effects or to even lift them up in the air. That was really, really cool, really well done. The back wall was all wood, and they used it to display different images or again use colors that would help to add to the overall scene. The main characters wore the same clothes throughout the play, and it looked very appropriate for those characters, but other NPCs, for lack of a better word, that would help to fill out the scene, they would change their clothes constantly, whether they were playing elves or other different types of characters. And consistently, I felt like the wardrobe was impressive and really helped to convey the type of scene that the musical was trying to show you. But I gotta say, the highlight from a production value of the entire show was Shelob, the giant spider. They did an amazing job of portraying her. Absolutely terrifying, absolutely frightening. One of the highlights of the show for sure. Kudos to whoever was involved in putting her together. And then the last thing I want to mention in regards to what I liked about this musical is you'll notice in the section where I talk about what I don't like, I've got some problems with the music, but there is one song, Now and For Always. I thought they did an incredible job of putting that on. It's with Frodo and Sam, and then actually Gollum joins in a little bit towards the end. Very well done, very memorable, just an absolutely awesome piece. I felt like they put that together just about as well as you could do on a live stage. All right, so those are all the things that I really enjoyed about this musical. Now, let's talk about some of the things that I did not like. And to be clear, I'm coming from the standpoint of someone who really, really loves Lord of the Rings, meaning I read all the books. I've seen all the movies. My wife and I, we bought the extended versions of all the movies and we rewatch them periodically. Again, we have Elvish writing engraved into our rings. We played Lego Lord of the Rings. All right. So we are huge, massive fans. So the way that I look at it and feel about it might not match you if you're not as passionate about the property, right? You might just like it and think it's cool, but you're not particular about a lot of things. And so you'd be willing to let some things go that for me kind of stick in my craw. All right. So I just want you to keep that in mind when we go through these lists of things that I have an issue with. So first and foremost, they take this 3-hour production and they use it to try to cram in the entire Lord of the Rings saga, right? Which is possible. The cartoons did that, right? And they did a great job of it. So I'm not saying that I don't want to say that the way Peter Jackson did it, of trying to make each movie 3 hours, is necessary. It's not at all. But I don't like the way they crammed this story into the production. They cut out a bunch of details that, in my opinion, make it difficult to follow this story if you're not already very familiar with it. And even more importantly, they changed the timeline or flat out changed characters in order to accommodate cutting down this story. And as someone, again, who's a big fan, I didn't like it. I didn't appreciate it. There were about 2 or 3 instances where my wife and I were whispering to each other, like, wait a minute, this isn't right? This isn't the way it's really supposed to work. Why do they do it this way? And we were confused. And again, I understand things would have to be cut. Things would have to be changed in order to fit this production into 3 hours. I didn't like the way that they did it, especially because they took the entire first half of the production, basically 1.5 hours, all of Act 1, and made that the entirety of Fellowship of the Ring. So Fellowship of the Ring got a ton of attention. And then the last hour and a half, they crammed in Two Towers and Return of the King and changed a bunch of stuff in order to accommodate that. I'm not with it. I didn't enjoy that at all. Another thing that I wasn't a big fan of, the Ents, which are the talking trees that you encounter in the second movie, Two Towers, they are not physically represented in the production. It's just a voice that you hear from on high. And not only are the actors basically looking up at nothing while they're talking to this voice, they walk around to different sections on the stage as if the ent is this one ent that they're talking to is all around them. It feels very odd. It feels very odd watching it. I did not feel like the scenes with the ents worked well at all. And of course, it's a significant part of Act Two. So it felt like there were multiple times where I'm watching them walk to these different spaces and look up at absolutely nothing for no reason. And the whole time I was thinking to myself, why did they do this? Like, you could have just went on ahead and figured out how to put a costume on somebody or have a big, tall person, at least stand there while another voice is going on. Something, anything would have been better than this. Another problem is the orcs, terrible. The orcs are absolutely awful. What they basically did is took 5 people and put them in like these almost like bomber jackets with paint over them and put ski masks on them, and then kind of make them parkour artists where they're dancing around and jumping around, and they never feel threatening. They never are visually imposing. It's just it's underwhelming every time they're on the screen. And if you've seen Lord of the Rings, you know the orcs are on the screen quite a bit. And so for that part to be wrong, it kind of mars several of the scenes that you end up watching. But believe it or not, everything I just mentioned compared to the last 2 issues is kind of small potatoes. There's 2 really, really massive issues that brought down my enjoyment of this play. First and foremost, the music is not good. And when I say it's not good, again, I'm not talking about from a production value standpoint. Like the quality of the singing, the quality of the music playing, all of that seemed to be on point. Again, I think the actors are phenomenal, but the sound mixing is terrible to the point that the music, it completely overpowers the lyrics and you cannot hear what's actually being said at all, or understand at least what's being said, which is a massive issue for people who have not read the books, because many of these songs were not in the movies, right? Like Peter Jackson didn't carry over a lot of those songs. So if you haven't read the books and don't already know the lyrics and you're hearing these lyrics for the first time, in my opinion, you're lost. You're lost. You're not able to follow along with what they're doing. Again, an exception to this is Now and For Always. I feel like they did a great job of putting that on. But most of the other songs, I was sitting there like, ho hum, whatever. I've read the books. I remember some of those songs. And so there were a couple of times where I was able to follow along, but a lot of times I was lost. And my wife, who has not read the books, completely lost. Completely lost, did not understand what was being said at all. And obviously, in a musical, that's a big issue. But to be honest with you, even more importantly, and I'm sure there will be people in the comments who disagree with me and will tell me I'm crazy, but in my opinion, the real issue with this musical is that they chose the wrong production. If you're going to do a musical of a story Tolkien has written, what you really need to do is The Hobbit. All right, the songs in The Hobbit are 10 times better than Lord of the Rings. My opinion, all right? For Now and For Always, definitely a great song, right? The story goes on, the road goes on and on. That's a fantastic song. But honestly, you can argue that's really a Hobbit song, not a Lord of the Rings song. Outside of that, to me, Lord of the Rings doesn't really have those iconic songs that you really love that stay in your head. Whereas with The Hobbit, Lonely Mountain, amazing. Bilbo Baggins Hates, amazing. Down Goblin Town, amazing, right? You've got three iconic tracks right off the bat that could easily help carry a musical. And as far as making it fit 3 hours, hey, Peter Jackson figured it out. I'm sure production can figure it out as well. So if you're going to make a musical about what Tolkien has done, to me, either you do The Hobbit or you just go ahead and do both and say, hey, screw the story. We're just here for the music and play the songs back to back to back and be done with it. But to try to take the Lord of the Rings story, cram it down and cut out a bunch of things that make it very difficult for people to follow it, and frankly remove a bunch of critical details that I feel like you really shouldn't have removed, especially when you decide to put the entire Fellowship of the Ring in there and basically cut out large parts of the second and third movie. I don't feel like it works. I don't feel like it works. Again, for casuals, it'll work, right? For casual fans of Lord of the Rings, I think this will work well. For people who love Lord of the Rings, no matter what, and they'll just take it any way they can get it, this will obviously work. You're going to be able to experience Lord of the Rings in a way that you really can't, right? Outside of this, having these people live in front of you, playing out these characters that you love. But for people like me who are kind of fanatical about Lord of the Rings and yet at the same time need their Lord of the Rings content to be of a certain level of quality. Like, I love Lord of the Rings. I do not like Rings of Power. I do not feel like that's a good show. You can't give me any old Lord of the Rings thing, right? So for that type of person, I'm not sure if this musical is going to work. So you've got to make a decision for yourself based on how much you love Lord of the Rings, how much you love musicals, how much you love what they're attempting to do, whether or not this show would be worth your money. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Leave me your comments down below. Did you enjoy this review? For those of you who have already seen the show, how did you feel about how I represented it? Did you have any disagreements? Maybe some of you really enjoyed it and feel like there are some things that I missed. If you were thinking about buying it and looked at this review, let me know down in the comments if I gave you all the information you felt like you needed in order to make an informed decision. Looking forward to seeing all the feedback, and I'll see you on the next video. Take care.